Forbidden Secrets: Life as a Chinese Concubine in Ancient Times. Before 1949, during China's imperial monarchy that spanned centuries, concubinage was a common and accepted practice in Chinese society. Concubines held a significant role in the culture of that era. Specifically, the Forbidden City, the imperial palace in ancient China, housed a considerable number of women in its imperial quarters. These concubines lived secluded lives within the inner court of the imperial quarters, confined to the northern part of the palace and prohibited from leaving. The existence of concubines within the Forbidden City was not particularly glamorous or exciting. While some concubines served as maids and servants, a small group had the sole purpose of bearing children for the emperor. The essay explores the harsh realities of their lives, shedding light on the difficulties and challenges they faced. The status of their offspring determined the hierarchy among concubines. Those who gave birth to sons were granted the title of imperial consorts, with the empress holding the highest position. Within the inner court, three main groups emerged: the female concubines, palace servants, and royal princesses. Overall, concubinage was an integral part of traditional Chinese culture before the country transitioned to a communist system in 1949. This historical practice is a significant aspect of China's past, providing valuable insights into the lives of women in the imperial era and the structure of the Forbidden City's inner workings. The life of a Chinese concubine. It might be hard to understand what a Chinese concubine does all day. In today's world, men and women are more equal than they were in ancient China, even though there is still room for improvement. In Chinese, the word for concubine is chair, which literally means female slave. This shows what the idea behind concubinage was. As an imperial concubine, you no longer have control over your life. You are treated the same as a slave, as the wife of an emperor or king. Your life belongs to the emperor, and a concubine can only leave the Forbidden City or Forbidden Palace, where the ancient Chinese emperors lived, with the emperor's permission. Chinese concubine training. In ancient China, the role of a concubine was indeed filled with challenges and hardships. While the selection process and training were rigorous, there were certain perceived benefits that enticed some women to pursue this path. The allure of becoming a concubine often lay in the hope of gaining favor and influence within the imperial court, which could elevate their social status and that of their families. For many women, this was a rare opportunity to escape poverty or ordinary life and potentially secure a life of luxury and privilege. Despite the difficulties they faced, some women might have seen this as a chance for personal growth and advancement. The training they underwent aimed to refine their intellect, behavior, and virtues, which could lead to greater self-improvement and potentially a higher standing in society. Additionally, the prospect of catching the emperor's attention and becoming one of the few favored concubines was seen as a way to experience a life of power and luxury, even if it came with its own set of challenges. It is important to understand that the societal norms and values of that time heavily influenced the decisions of these women. The notion of loyalty to the emperor and the belief in traditional hierarchical structures played a significant role in their willingness to endure the tests and challenges to become a concubine. Moreover, societal pressures and family expectations might have also compelled some women to pursue this path, as it could elevate their family's status and provide security for their loved ones. Despite the potential allure, it is crucial to recognize that not all women aspired to be concubines willingly. The passage highlights that many candidates did not pass the rigorous tests, and a significant number were left feeling sad and lonely throughout their lives. The concubine system was far from ideal, and politics, jealousy, and rivalries were prevalent within the imperial court. Process of selection and requirements. There were a lot of rules about how to choose concubines, and these rules changed as different dynasties came and went. During the Jin dynasty, young women who weren't married were chosen based on a number of factors. But by the time of the Ming dynasty, every family had to be chosen. By law, all young women who were not married had to go through a new selection process. Girls were only exempt if they were married, or if they had a physical disability or deformity that was verified by a doctor. But the Qing Emperor Shou and Ji started to keep out most of the Han people by limiting selection to only 8 Bandas families, who were mostly Manchurian and Mongolian. The Board of Revenue told officials in the capital and provincial garrisons that they needed the help of clan heads. The banner officials then gave the commander's headquarters in Beijing and the Board of Revenue a list of all the women who were available. The date for the choice was then set by the Board of Revenue. During the Qing dynasty, girls were taken on a certain day to the Forbidden City's Xinwu, or Martial Spirit Gate, to be checked out. They would be with their parents or closest relatives, as well as the heads of their clans and other local officials. It didn't matter how rich or poor a concubine was, and many emperors chose them from the general public. The only person who wasn't picked from a high-ranking official's family was the empress. Fewer than 100 people would be chosen to spend a few nights with women who were experts at training and managing maids. The bodies of the candidates were checked for things like skin infections, body hair, body odor, etc. The finalists were taught how to speak, move, and act in a way that was socially acceptable. They also learned how to read, write, paint, play chess, and dance. Life in the inner court of the Forbidden City. After being chosen, a concubine had to stick to a strict schedule in the Forbidden City. Eunuchs, who had a lot of power in the palace, watched what they did very carefully. The main job of concubines is to make the emperor happy, especially in bed. They are not allowed to have sexual relationships with anyone but the emperor, and a court doctor had to check them out before the emperor came to their rooms. If someone breaks this rule, they will be killed, and later they will have to do things like sew clothes and embroider as part of their daily lives. Concubines' activities and daily lives. Most of what they did was watched over by the eunuchs, who had a lot of power in the palace. Before the emperor came to their room, concubines had to take a bath and get checked out by a court doctor. When the emperor had hundreds or even thousands of concubines, any lady he visited would have to deal with jealous rivalries. With so many concubines, there was a lot of jealousy and competition for the emperor's attention, which was often sought and fought over fiercely. Many concubines spent their days putting on makeup, sewing, doing all kinds of arts, and hanging out with other concubines. However, direct interactions with the emperor were rare for most of them, leading to feelings of sadness, loneliness, and unfulfilled hopes. Under different emperors, the number of concubines changed, but the ranking stayed the same: polygamy and status in society. In a nutshell, concubines are like mistresses. In ancient China, polygamy was common, especially among the wealthy. Even though not everyone in China can have a concubine, it used to be the norm for any successful man to have at least one. Many people in feudal China had more than one wife. Even so, only rich men or men from the upper middle class could afford to have more than one wife. It was seen as a sign of a man's virility, as was the fact that there were a lot of women around. The main goal was to have children and keep the father's family name alive. Confucianism said that a man's personal growth included being able to take care of his family. This was especially important for the emperor, who had to make sure he had an heir to the throne. Confucianism said that a man's growth meant that he could take care of his family. This was very important for the emperor, who had to make sure he had a son or daughter who would take over the throne. Hierarchy and the roles of wives. But like many other things in ancient China, there is a strict order to how things work. As long as the emperor is still alive, the status of the concubines will never be higher than that of the official wives. The royal family concubines are only recognized as sexual partners of the king and are expected to have children, but they will never be sent to the throne as empresses. All the other wives were not as good as the main wife. She was expected to follow the higher rules of polygamy and teach the other wives how to act in harmony for the good of the group. Women, especially the main character's wife, had to get over their earthly feelings. The idea that they were living for something bigger than themselves probably helped them get over feelings of anger, jealousy, and competition. The husband shouldn't have a favorite wife, and none of the wives should get all of his attention. All of the wives had to get the same amount of love, which meant that passionate attachments were not allowed. The imperial wives had different titles and ranks in each dynasty. The empress was at the top, and her other wives filled the ranks below her. Most of the wives were in the lower levels. When a new wife joined the imperial family, for example, she was given a place in the order of things. People thought that the health of the whole Chinese empire depended on how well the emperor's sexual life was run. In the 10th century, Chinese calendars weren't used to keep track of time. Instead, they were used to keep the emperor's schedule in order. The rotation of concubines sleeping with the emperor was kept to a regimented order. With brushes dipped in imperial vermilion, secretaries were hired to write down the emperor's sexual life. However, as time went on, societal norms and attitudes began to shift, and the practice of meticulously recording the emperor's intimate life eventually faded into history, giving rise to more progressive and modern ways of governance within the Chinese Empire. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel, History Bazaar, for more captivating tales from history.